Yo, YouTube. Today we've got another one. Today we're going to discuss why you must write. As I've titled it, How to Dismember Your Inner Bitch, I'm going to explain to you how writing helps you achieve self-awareness. So I have created this video because writing has done so much for me in my life. It's helped me in innumerable ways, and I want to share with you its benefits. If you're anything like me and your mind doesn't stop racing, then you will find writing helpful. Writing was first suggested to me in the wake of my mum's death by a family friend as a form to help me grieve. She's a bit of a wishy-washy wench, and I decided to ignore her. But she was persistent, and 5 years on, I started writing. However, it wasn't in the best circumstances. I turned up to university, and with the new surroundings and drastic changes, I found myself crying a bit too much. And it struck me that I kind of should address this. I opened up a Word document and started writing. In that writing session, I acknowledged and reasoned to myself why I was feeling what I was feeling. And after doing so, needless to say, the bouts of crying really kind of came to an end. I just felt considerably better. And 3 years on since that day, I have written about more or less 80,000 words on that single document. I named it at the time, I Miss My Mum, and that title hasn't changed since. I'm incredibly proud of that document, so much so that recently my laptop almost got wiped. And if I was given a choice to only keep one document, it would be the I Miss My Mum document. It's my whole life over the last 3 years, all the things I've gotten up to, and all the stories that I could remember before that. So writing really is a form of self-awareness. It's an exercise in knowing yourself. And I hope that what I will share with you today will perhaps spur you into action, and you can start writing and enjoy the benefits of doing so. So the number one reason why you should start writing is because of personal development. There has been no other experience beside my computer acting as my own private therapist that has led to more development in myself. So I have pondered many subjects, usually my own lackluster emotional state, and being able to write down my thoughts and feelings has made me better able to pinpoint why I think what I think and do what I do. So now it's time for a little anecdote. Earlier this year, I found myself in a very good position with really nothing to complain about. I was doing very well, but there was a part of me that was still miserable. And in my writings, I kind of came to the conclusion that I tended to catastrophize. And I went further in my writings to try and ultimately understand and explore why I engaged in this almost self-destructive behavior. And so I managed, I think quite accurately, to pinpoint this behavior down to thinking that the worst always happens and that I shouldn't get too comfortable. Cheers, Mum and Dad. And writing ultimately helped me figure out that I was stopping myself fully letting go. Through the tireless analysis and confrontation of the dark pits of my mind, I found the answer of not being able to let go. And when I reached that epiphany, for me, it was really rewarding, and especially in the progression of the discovery of myself. And ultimately, if it wasn't for writing, I would have never reached it. The brutal self-discovery of one's dubious existence is the biggest benefit to writing. It forces you to confront the dark pits of your mind and be brutally honest with yourself, which ultimately leads to growth. So if you start writing consistently, you won't journal whilst feeling quite emotional, whether that's angry or upset or X, Y, and Z, and ignore it. You will, after long enough practicing writing, begin to face those emotions and attack head on what is bothering you, but which once took you considerable bravery and courage to face. So it eventually took me 2 years since I started writing to really get to the real work of the benefits of my writing, what I learned to be the real benefits. And it might seem that those first 2 years were wasted, but as I will come on to later, they definitely weren't, and perhaps served as a good foundation. Without them, I would have never found myself writing about the stuff that was really important to me later on. And so once, after a bit of practice and writing and consistency, you will begin to explore the reasons behind why you do what you do and think what you think. The great thing about writing on your computer or a piece of paper is that it's private and confidential. You can be sure that it's not going to get out to anybody, and it gives you a space to be able to acknowledge them. All those things that you hold close to your heart that you would rarely tell anyone else is utterly private. And if you're ashamed of it, you can always delete it. The development that I have had from writing was not purely psychological or emotion, but dare I say spiritual. I don't subscribe to the wishy-washy nonsense of star signs or religious fads, but I can say that writing has made me progress more than any other experience in life. So if I stay consistent with my writing, which I generally do, I reach the perimeters of my thinking and eventually build a closer relationship with myself as my writing and time progresses. I know it sounds cringy, but all I hope is that you can start writing and see it for yourself. So the second reason why you should start writing is that writing can act as a pressure release. In my experience, it acts as a valve in which I can turn and just spew the ongoings of my cluttered mind and ultimately release pressure. So I know some of you will definitely experience this, but my mind loves to race non-stop. And really, it's a debilitating and horrendous affliction. But when I get to write, I get to offload all that pressure onto my Dell and give myself a moment to not have to think about it. And yes, before you ask, you can still get the bitches with a Dell. Despite my shambolic PC game, the second time I wrote, I literally churned out about 10,000 words in that singular session. The relief I felt was orgasmic. I felt lighter. I just felt considerably better. And a family friend first suggested it to me 5 years prior. And so this was literally 5 years of thoughts and feelings and experiences and so on. And those 5 years were formative as fuck. And so if you are someone who finds themselves not being able to stop thinking sometimes, I promise you, when you start, you will wonder where the hell writing had been your whole life. So the third benefit of writing is that it acts as a useful memory store. So at times I've had a pretty wild life, and it's very useful to be able to write down the story, perhaps the details and feelings and thoughts surrounding it, usually the same day, and not have to rely on my shoddy cognitive function. Thank you, weed. So another useful element of using your writing document as a memory store is that occasionally memories will crop up that you just want to note down. In my instance, since my dad died when I was 6 and you're basically an unconscious, obnoxious zombie until that point, I didn't really remember much. And what I could remember, it all seemed to be negative. Aside from the matter-of-fact observations he made, over 17 years on, my mind still likes to conjure up some more positive memories of him, which I like to note down. And this is where I find my writing document is particularly handy as a memory store. So the last but not least, fourth benefit to writing is that it can act as a point of reference. I can look back at the shit that I wrote, the worries of the time, the things that I was up to, and look at how far I've come. So it can be really rewarding to be able to look back in the past, perhaps having thought that you spent your time negatively, but when you frame it against the person reading it, you are almost always proud of yourself. Another thing is being able to travel into the past. I can look at the things I did, the things I felt, and the thoughts I was having, and take myself back to that moment in time. A time machine, if you will. And even sometimes I'm brought to tears in the kind of relative sense of looking at how far I've come and the things I was experiencing back then. And no, it's not just at the things my dad said. Sometimes it can feel like life's flying by and you don't get a moment to stop. It can feel like you've lost time and that you won't get it back again. But when you write daily or weekly, you can put yourself back in the moment and perhaps feel like you haven't lost that time. And this is where I find that my writing as a point of reference and almost time machine is just invaluable. So I hope that what I've shared to you today has been helpful. I titled this video, How to Dismember Your Inner Bitch, because I have come across too many people who lack self-awareness. They bury their heads in the sand and neglect arguably the most important thing in life, and that's knowing yourself. Humans, throughout time, whether consciously or not, have and are on a quest to understand themselves. Aristotle said that self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom. Shakespeare said that to thine own self be true. Writing is a great way of achieving this. This is a bit of a side remark, but whether they've achieved it through writing or not, I've found that the nicest people in life are those that know themselves. In discovering themselves and ultimately becoming secure, they have learnt about the human condition and are pretty able to understand you too. So at this point it might seem like, where do I get started? And to that I say, make it easy. For some practical advice, just perhaps write a sentence about what you got up to, nothing too deep. But eventually, if you stay consistent, then you'll want to start writing about the things that really matter to you. So I do it all in one document, as I said earlier. I start a new paragraph each day. I start with the date, and I use the sign out, a gangster of life signing out. Part of that's for organisation purposes, to know when a day's writing is ended, but also because it takes a gangster of life to face up with the utmost honesty your thoughts and feelings and behaviours and really try and explore what it all means to you. And soon enough, you'll appreciate all the evidence that you have to suggest that you are a gangster of life too. And one fucking thing I know for certain is that when I look back at my writing when I'm 30, 40 or 80, I'm going to be nothing but proud that I spent that time writing the story of my life. Finally, I'd like to thank you for watching my ramblings today, and I hope that what I've shared has given you a good set of reasons for why you should start writing yourself too. Godspeed, boys and girls. A gangster of life, signing out.